Hello, I'm Juliette Foster, and welcome to our Future of Utilities webinar entitled Digital Transformation in Energy, a Blueprint for Success. It is hosted in association with Kaluza. Now, technology promises a world of opportunities for the energy sector. I'm talking about unlocking new products, for example, also delivering seamless and integrated customer experiences and finding hidden value through innovation and scalability, all very familiar themes. But the big challenge is in successfully navigating the journey to implementation. In other words, solving complex data migrations, operational shifts, and cultural change across the business. Well, our panelists today are going to offer guidance for successfully managing that journey. In fact, they're going to offer lessons which are based on their own real-world experiences. Now, they are ideally placed to do this because they have a strong background in leading business critical programs, and they're going to provide a blueprint for how energy retailers, indeed customers, and the planet will benefit from that journey. Okay, making it succeed, making sure that it's going to happen. So let's meet our panel. First up, all the way from down under, we've got Glenn Waterson. Now, Glenn is GM Retail Transformation at the leading Australian retailer AGL Energy. Glenn, I'm going to start with a cliche. G'day.
G'day, Juliet. It's
Thanks very much.
amazing to
Look,
be with you.
thank you. Look, it's good. It's good of you to be here because I know that it's quite late where you are in the evening. So thank you so much for that. Can we start out with you briefly introducing yourself to our audience and telling them what it is that you do?
Sure thing. And yeah, it just hit 9 p.m. here in Melbourne, Australia, but amazing to be part of this conversation. Glenn Waterson, so the GM of Retail Transformation here at AGL Energy, and really leading a huge transformation of our organisation, both how we operate in terms of our operating model and really looking at the technology that underpins that to unlock the sustainable future that we're all aspiring to achieve.
Also, we're going from Australia to Europe. In Germany, in fact, because we're going to be joined by Anne-Marie de Jong at Vattenfall, which I understand is the Swedish for waterfall. Is that correct?
Well, it is one of the largest utility companies in Sweden. Absolutely. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so that's good. So more geography there. In fact, linguistics, Vattenfall, your first bit of Swedish. Look, Anne-Marie, the same thing to you. If you could actually introduce yourself and tell the audience what it is that you do at Vattenfall.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's amazing to be here. Good morning from Germany. I'm at the moment in Düsseldorf. And what I do at the moment is at Vattenfall, I'm in the management team for e-mobility at Vattenfall Germany and really spearheading the transition to install as many chargers and drive the energy transition from the e-mobility perspective. Before, I had various roles as an executive in scale-ups in the energy business, tying from mobility, but also a lot of energy storage and also solar. So really bringing it now together to drive that transition because we are having very exciting times.
I'm sure you are, but look, thank you so much. A really comprehensive overview there of what it is that you do. So we're going to move from Düsseldorf to Doha. We're going to join Santiago Yanales, who's the Managing Director of Iberdrola Innovation. Good to see you, Santiago. You know what you have to do. Tell the audience what it is that you do at Iberdrola Innovation.
Yes, hi. First of all, thanks very much for having me. So, right, I'm just in the middle between London and Australia, so that's a nice one. And so my name is Santiago Bañales. I'm the Managing Director of Iberdrola Innovation Middle East. What we do here at Iberdrola Innovation Middle East is to design and develop artificial intelligence-based, data-driven solutions to enable the energy transition. So what we are doing is to develop these solutions for the integration of renewables, having smarter networks, and also to help our customers to make a better use of energy. I've been doing that in the last 10 years. And before that, I was CEO of a smart grid manufacturing company, which was the digitalization of the sector. And before that, I was director of products and service development of a very important retailer in Spain. So I haven't seen the evolution of the business in the last 20 years from very close to the field. So thanks a lot for having me today.
Okay, so thank you so much. And last but not least, we have Neil Gulhar. Now, he's the Chief Product Officer at Kaluza. He's in the other end of London, away from me. But it's good to see you, Neil. So tell us what it is that you do. I mean, you know the drill.
Yes. I'm the Chief Product Officer here at Kaluza. We work with energy companies around the world, like AGL in Australia, but many others around the globe. And we help energy companies with our AI and software solutions to automate their operations, to deliver a much better consumer experience than exists today, and to help them take advantage of all the opportunities that are arising on the grid with the proliferation of distributed energy resources.
Also, thank you to the rest of the panel. Great introductions, and it really sets us up for the conversation that lies ahead, because there is a lot of ground to cover in the next hour or so, and we want you, our audience, to be involved. In fact, we would encourage you to send in your questions, any comments or observations that you have to the panel, and we will deal with them towards the end of the discussion. If you want to be part of this conversation, send your questions using the question section on the right-hand side of the web page, and we will try to answer as many of them as we can in the time available towards the end of the discussion. So let's kick things off with a question to all of our panel. Are you ready? Can I see some thumbs up? Great, you're all ready. Fantastic. So what I want to do is to start the conversation by looking at the current state of play in the energy sector. In other words, looking at the pressures you're currently under, and indeed the emerging opportunities for retailers to thrive in a future system. Anne-Marie, take a break, because I'm not going to start with you. As Glenn is the furthest away geographically, he's going to set the ball rolling. But look, can you take us through the Australian energy landscape? Because a lot of us are not familiar with what is going on. But what are the emerging trends, and above all, the challenges that you're seeing in that journey to net zero?
Absolutely, and yeah, we are a little while away, and I guess relatively small population compared to others. But I guess the landmass that we have here in Australia presents a really unique opportunity and a number of significant challenges for us. And across the national electricity market, which is really the eastern seaboard of Australia, we have 40,000 kilometres of transmission lines and really 9 million consumers that are part of that ecosystem, really connected across that area. And so presents some great opportunity for us as we take them on that energy transition, and as you've described, a number of challenges. And I think for us, we are a country that has amazing penetration of solar, and I think we're very proud of nearly 1 in 3 households really has solar and is taking advantage of the sunshine that we have here. But I guess how we use that and that intermittent energy that's coming in throughout the day, how we best store that, how we best use that, and support our consumers who do want to be much more, I guess, part of the energy transition and be part of the energy market. And I guess really that solar boom and supporting that with storage is one key challenge for us as we look at supporting our customers. I think the other is data, and we've talked, I'm sure we'll talk today about data in detail. Really, consumers want access to their data. They want to see and be able to use that to make better energy choices. And I think really important as we see, again, high penetration of solar, people want to be able to use that effectively to be able to lower their bills. Cost of living, like many around the globe, is really front of mind, and affordability is important. And we want to use the data and the insights that we have to support our customers in that. And I guess the other key trend is decarbonisation and really wanting to orchestrate energy. And we're really proud of the work we're doing with Kaluza and with others to really allow us to orchestrate energy and provide some really interesting technology and experiences for customers to make it effortless for them to be part of that experience as well. So, a long way for us to go to enable that and to bring all of those experiences together, but really exciting times to be able to turn what is a population of customers who generally historically haven't been involved in the energy market to now really, we expect over the next period, more than 50% of our customers are going to want to be prosumers, be part of the energy transition with us, and that is an important milestone for us to be part of that journey with them.
Right. So it's a lot there happening in the Australian market. Let me flip things and take it over to you, Anne-Marie, in Germany. What are the trends that you've spotted in your market?
Well, I think there's similarities to Australia, of course. We see the acceleration of the green energy transition, but it's coming more with growing realism. I think, that the German government is really set on target to hit that goal of being net zero by 2045. But there's a lot of pressure at the moment from policymakers. how to balance ambition with reality. I mean, energy poverty is really a topic, and affordability is more in the spotlight. We see societal issues really popping up around that. So what you see is the support mechanisms are being reevaluated, also partially bringing uncertainty in the market. The German government just closed a huge budget that they will allocate 800 million euros to infrastructure and also renewable transition. But what does that really mean now for the users? I mean, the energy prices, especially in the industry, are one of the highest in Germany. And you see that the public sentiment is really shifting, that also affordability of the transition is a thing. But now here comes the interesting trend, I think, is that you really see that digital customer experience is becoming a big differentiator at the moment in the German market, because customers want transparency, they want control and personalization. And you see that the need and the demand for green digital bundled offerings is rising. And so you also see that like players like Octopus, Tibber, Enpal, 1,5, they're reshaping the landscape of the retailers with tech models first. And that's a big trend which we're seeing. And I think something we'll see too that will continue further.
Let me bring Santiago into the conversation, because look, so much is happening, two intrinsically different markets, but there are overlaps, Germany and Australia. But the binding theme, or certainly one of the connecting themes that has come across in their responses, is the customer, particularly the cost of living pressures, etc. But how much of what we're seeing is down to shifting customer expectations as opposed to economic changes?
Yeah, that's a key issue that definitely we need to address. First of all, I wanted to say that it's a privilege being part of Iberdrola, because we are a global company that is integrated and operating in different markets. So we have the renewable business, building more than 40 gigawatts of renewable energy across the world. We have the networks, and we are serving around 100 million clients in different geographies, right? In Spain, in UK, US, in Brazil, in Australia. So this gives us a very good perspective on what is going on in different geographies. But I think you can see very clearly some common patterns, right, on what is going on in terms of how these changes are transforming the retail business. What I will say is that out of the three key changes, or the three key drivers of the energy transition towards net zero, which is more renewables, more networks, and more electrification, what is changing a lot, what we're facing is the electrification piece. The fact that our customers at this point, as we have more electrical vehicles, we have more decentralized solar, we have more batteries, we have more heat pumps. As we electrify the transportation, the heating sectors, this is transforming completely the role that final customers may have in the energy sector. When you put that together with the fact that we have much more renewables and you need a continuous balancing of the market, all the way from the milliseconds to the years, then the role of demand in this new paradigm is really key. I think the demand side management, which has been with us in the industry for the last 40, 50 years, is completely a new game at this point. And coming to your question, I believe that it is not only about changing economics. I think that a large part of the expectation of our customers, and I may say the citizens in general, is to have a role, to participate in this process of getting to net zero. And I think the key challenge for retailers at this point is to be able not only to help customers, to benefit from the changes and pay less money for energy and so on, but to empower them, to enable them to be able to fully participate in this process, in these changes that we are living for the years to come. In that sense, I think technology is key. So the fact that you cannot make decisions on how to use your electrical vehicle, batteries, solar panels, and so on, just your way. You really need automation. You need digital platforms, which need to balance this enabling coming from the technology, but also respecting and helping customers to play the game according to their values and preferences. So I think that's the big transformation of the retail business. How we can empower the customers to have key role, transformative role in the energy sector while preserving, confidentiality, security, and general preferences of our customers. I think that's that's the challenge we have in front of us.
I mean, that is a fascinating response to the question, Santiago, and thank you so much for that. Let me bring in you, Neil, because look, what Santiago is saying is that this journey to zero, to zero, it is massive, it is huge, it is bringing in all sorts of elements, etc. Okay, it's going to have a huge impact on infrastructure, it's going to have a huge impact on consumer behavior too. In other words, we're talking big money, a huge amount of spend on technology, because that is the facilitator. But my question to you is there a risk, for example, that yes, we're putting in the money, but it's not really getting to the heart of it. So effectively, there's a danger that we could be shoving dollars into a big black hole. This is going to swallow us up. It's slightly fatalistic, but this is an endless spend, really, isn't it?
No, it's the right question. And look, the journey to zero today in our industry, just on software alone, is $210 billion we spend as an industry globally on software platforms. So it is a big sum of money. And yes, the risk is very real that money is not going to be used effectively. So let's actually follow the money. Where does that 210 billion go on software technology today? The fact is, a lot of it goes into software that was developed for a different age, for a different set of problems, right? You go back to the 80s, a lot of the systems that utilities are using today to automate their back office, they were developed in the 80s to digitize what were paper processes. I mean, that sounds archaic, but that's the software platform we're using today. Or you go back to when smart meters, were a major trend, and the software developed in that age was all about storing 1,000 times more data. Well, guess what? Today, storage is cheap with proliferation of cloud. That's not the problem anymore. We need to store all this data. That's a solved problem. And so the risk is absolutely there. And unless we find a better way to spend that over 200 billion on new technologies that are going to solve today's problems, which we've already talked about what that has to do with. That has to do with distributed energy resources. It has to do with managing the grid for reliability. It has to do with delivering a much better consumer experience. These are today's problems. And so, yes, that money that's being spent today absolutely needs to be redirected into new software technology.
Thank you so much for that, because what I want to do now is to broaden out the conversation so that we can stay with the theme of technology. And Glenn, it comes back to you. I need to know from you how your company is leveraging technology so that you can thrive in this new energy future. And above all, tell me about how critical technology is to that future strategy.
Look, it is absolutely a key part of our strategy, and we need to connect our customers to that transformative future and a sustainable future. And to do that, they need choice, transparency, and the ability to interact with the energy market. And I think for us, a key part of our retail transformation program is reducing our cost to serve. We need to make sure we're delivering and meeting the affordability expectations of our customers. But also, allowing us to have the flexibility and nimbleness to respond quickly and really deliver things to market at speed. And you hear things like AI, incredibly important part of that journey. We've recently gone through a transformation of bringing Salesforce into our ecosystem, really focused on customer engagement. That's been a key part of enabling our engagement with customers and making it more effortless. And as we mentioned earlier, really working and partnering with Kaluza then to bring about that whole of technology ecosystem together with how we work to make sure that we can deliver better outcomes for our customers. I think really evidenced by some of our recent technology launches. We've got a platform called Electrify Now that we've launched to market, which really allows customers to be part of that electrification journey. And we've seen an amazing uptake, over 300,000 customers and visits to that platform. Over 90% of customers want to be part of the electrification journey. And so providing them with choice and the ability to, I guess, tailor offerings to them, but using technology to be really personalized and allow it to be really focused on what matters to them is incredibly important. So a really key part of our strategy and something we're really focused on as we go on this journey.
And you mentioned partnerships. We are going to look at that a little bit later in our conversation. But Anne-Marie, let me take it to you, because in your experience, what do you see as the most crucial things you need to consider when you're thinking about technology investment so that you can achieve that transformation?
Yeah, I think based on my experience experience from the various companies we've been in, really targeting the renewable transition, I think there's two things to look at, which are always key. And they sound so basic. But first, really build with the user in mind. I think sometimes, people like understand the problem and then they just go about it and then they board the users on later. But that the users are the crucial part. If you want to implement technology, make sure that you think of the users. And also, that also is the reality that not everyone is very digital native. That's a larger part of the population. That also, for example, in Germany, not everyone still has a smart meter. The rollout is very slow. So what does that mean from a user perspective? Now, secondly, I think transformation isn't a project, it's a capability, right? And we're transforming here. We're transforming how we work, but that also really means invest in the people who are going to be using the systems. And I think what we often forget is, there are a lot of projects, you set up this amazing software, but how do you upskill your staff? How do you make sure?
Yeah, I think we've got a few problems with your line, Anne-Marie. We will
that
try
it's
to get
properly being
that's
used,
fine.
because that's what I've seen a lot, is that there's so much amazing tech out there, but and agile.
We're having a few problems with your line, Anne-Marie, because it was freezing. But just picking up on that last point, what you were basically talking about was being aware of the technology. There's a lot that's out there, but also it's making sure that the teams can use it effectively so that you can have a smooth running business, and also you can actually succeed in bringing the customer on board. There are a few technical issues with your line, but thank you so much for handling that question. We'll try to straighten things up, but let me move it to Neil, because you can't have a conversation about technology without looking at data. You touched on this yourself in the earlier part of our conversation, but given that we are handling more data, my question to you is, how can a complex data migration be managed in a way that is resilient and at the same time at scale?
Yeah. I love that you used the word resilient there. It's top of mind for me. I was supposed to be traveling into Heathrow Airport this past weekend, and has been well publicized that one of the busiest airports in the world had a issue with the nearby substation and was closed for over a day. You think about that in today's age, right? And the reason I try to draw this line between data and that incident at Heathrow Airport is because data and AI can solve what happened that day, this past weekend. So right, next time this happens, we have the data and the capability today to, instead of having to shut down the airport for an entire day, having all of the players in the energy ecosystem share its data to avoid that in the future. So next time, knowing which consumers are on a tariff where you can control their load and then redirect that power to the airport. Then knowing which electric vehicles do those consumers have where we can just stop charging just for a few hours so we can redirect that power to the airport. Where do we have solar? Where do we have storage? And preventing that type of thing. That requires a data strategy which consolidates all of this data. So you have that end-to-end visibility all the way from something that happens on the grid to knowing which consumers can participate in an event like that. And then having that feedback loop so that the next time it happens, you know which consumers can participate, who want to earn a few extra bucks to help avoid that kind of thing. But again, that requires integrated data and then AI optimization to really balance the grid in real time in a way that consumers love, because they can save a lot of money. And then people like me who are traveling to the airport don't have to redirect to Gatwick.
An interesting example that you've taken there, rather fortuitous, I think, in terms of the timing, given the conversation that we're having here at the moment, because what leaps out at me is the way of actually using the consumer so that they're not just taking a service, but they're also solving a problem as well.
That is exactly spot on. And this sort of tie-in between what used to be two different parts of the system, right? When you thought about a power plant or you thought about poles and wires, that was a completely distinct thing from the end consumer experience. And today, data allows us to sort of converge all that data and really connect the dots between the consumer experience and grid reliability and when you need power and where you need it. And moreover, that's becoming hyper localized. So in places like Australia, right, there are parts of the grid that Glenn is dealing with that have so much solar, they have to curtail solar. But there's other parts which are starved because they're on the edge of the grid, and they have a completely different problem. So again, it's leveraging data to know where are those pockets where you have a unique situation, and then pulling the consumer experience in as part of the solution, to your point, Juliet.
I like what I'm hearing, but it also leans into the question that I'm going to put to you, Santiago, because look, this is great. The idea of having a system which is so integrated that everybody plays a part in it, not just buying things, not just using, but also problem solving as well. But at the same time, surely the culture of a business, okay, is really important in ensuring a successful tech migration. So it's the mindset, it's also the legacy technology as well. So really, how do you do it so that you can actually have cultural change hardwired, really hardwired into the DNA of a business, not just in one bit, but across, so it knocks out the silos, that everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet?
Well, Juliet, what a question are you asking me to be answering the couple of minutes? Okay, no, yeah, I mean, you're right on the right question to ask. I would like to say very briefly, let's reflect a little bit about the history of our sector, because the history is what defines the culture, right? So think about that the energy sector has been traditionally run by engineers, dealing with electromechanical technology, with very large investments made into the system, with heavy regulation, a very critical service provided to citizens. So all this makes that the culture is, culture that is risk averse somehow, that likes deterministic models, that has a conservative approach in general. And this has been a completely changed in the last, I would say, 20 years, 20 years more or less has been changing. But right now, the acceleration of the change is really is very important. I mean, we are accelerating all these changes at a very fast pace. So, and I think there are 4 key issues to look at. And again, this, we can do a webinar about that, but 4 key issues we need to look at. The first one is the new role, and it's 4 very big transformations. One is the transformation of the IT system of the utilities. That means, for example, in Iberdrola, we have made a big overhaul of the IT system, having a centralized, decentralized model where we are giving more freedom and capabilities in a decentralized way. And also we have put together a digital transformation office that is implemented top-down and bottom-up approaches to change. So the first thing is the transformation of the IT side of the business. The second, that's very important, is an HR transformation. What kind of profiles you're hiring? Look, in my company right now, I'm competing with Amazon, with the Microsoft and so on to attract talent. That's the kind of people I need in my team now, right? And this is a completely different HR, culture that you need to develop within the company. The third one, I think, will be a really transformation on the way we work, the tools we use, right? So right now in my company, we're in a transformation towards an agile company, doing things in a different way with different tools, and being able to make this, bridge between old ways of working and the new ways is a large challenge. And the last point I would like to mention, and you were talking about that before, is engaging with all the stakeholders of the system. It's not only about the energy company. And I will mention 2 things. One is how you approach innovation. You really need to have a very open innovation model where you can interact with startups, with universities, with other companies. And in this innovation toward digital transformation, we need to balance the innovation aspect together with the security and personal data protection. That's a key challenge. But also, it's not only about innovation, it's about regulation. It's about how we engage with public bodies in order to enable all the potential that we have in the energy system and in technology by developing the right regulation in terms of markets, in terms of access to be able to tap into the flexibility value that is embedded right now in the buildings, in the storage units, in electrical vehicles. So I will say that this last point is also key, how we work together as a stakeholder community in order to bring about all these changes in technology and that able to put together all these changes that we believe are necessary in this moment of the sector.
Yeah, but it's a great roadmap that you've outlined. And what I want to do with you, Glenn, is for you to give me an idea about the approach you've taken in terms of shaping and activating your company's retail transformation program, because I guess that a lot of what Santiago said just now resonates with you.
Absolutely. I love that answer that Santiago just gave. And I guess it just shows how powerful this network globally is, because I think the challenges that we're all experiencing as we look at transformation are so similar. And I think, critical component for us as we look to connect our customers to that sustainable future is recognizing the need for cultural and technology change. And a really important part of our transformation is that it is a full business transformation, and similar themes there around moves into value streams to really deliver value to consumers more effectively. And really shifting our mindset from, we've always been customer centric, but really driving towards customer obsession. And I think, data is, to the earlier points, is a really critical component of that, because we know that we are supporting customers who want to be part of that transition, and others that we can't leave behind. We need to continue to innovate and meet our customers where they're at. And I think for us, as we look at how we bring all those things together in a transformation, I guess the exciting thing for us is that we can see that our customers are interested. We're already providing real-time insights. We're using AI to try and provide predictive, ideas and perspectives to customers around engaging with electrification and around some of those activities, and really helping us make better decisions as to how we support our customers. But it can't, the technology and data is not it cannot be utilized and is not as powerful if you don't have the culture sitting behind it. And we are focused on empowering our teams, really uniting them around the goals of our customers. And I think similar to Santiago, really how we work needs to change to support that future of the utility. And I think that's what's exciting about what we're doing. It really is bringing all of those things together and changing the future of energy, which is an exciting place to be.
And let me just jump in here, because and to bring in Anna Marie, because look, what we've heard here is how you really drill down deep to make sure that all the components of the company are working, that everybody is on board that journey. But whilst you're doing this, how can you ensure that you're building scalability and adaptability into your planning as well?
Well, very good point, Juliet. And I think what's really important here is really focusing and building with modularity in mind. So that means investing in platforms and not in products, because it needs to all fit together, right? So it's about the platform and how that integrates with each other. And I think if you look at the learnings from the various scale-ups and companies that I'm at now, it needs to fit together. And I think that's sometimes the hardest part, because there's so much good tech out there and there's so much well being developed, but how do you bring it together? And then also, I think really relevant is, and this is maybe different to how we've worked in the past, is continuous iteration. So, roll out in phases, get the learnings in, continue to iterate, because also with the regulations in place and sometimes political movements happening so fast, how do you quickly adjust to that? So I think also when you develop or roll out your products and want to continue to keep it scalable, how do you keep those two factors in? And I think that's also therefore acknowledging that it's not ever properly finished. Of course, you have a state that you want to achieve, but how do you continue to improve it? But also, how do you continue to be agile and adjust to realities? Because, subsidies are sometimes great, but they're also very disruptive sometimes, or then they get cut off, from one day to the next. So what does that mean? And how do you adapt that in your product setup? I think is very important to think about.
Okay, we've got a few minutes left, so before we close out this section. So if we can be brief in our responses. But Glenn, let me take it back to you, because we mentioned the P word earlier in the discussion, that is partnership. How important has it been for you? And what are the key lessons that you've gleaned from working with top quality partners?
Look, critically important. I think really important to have a partner that understands your business model and has the flexibility and I guess the ability to operate with us and able to really enable the strategy that we have. And I think that the technology is fantastic. There's a lot of options out there. Really being able to communicate effectively and understand how to bring that to life is absolutely critical. So, big part of how we make our technology choices on the program, and something that's really setting us up for success as we move forward.
Mm. And Neil, what have you learned through Kaluza's transformation work with retailers?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think our biggest lesson is exactly what Anne-Marie and Glenn are alluding to, that we don't live in this landscape alone. And so having a first principled open architecture is how Kaluza thinks about the world. At AGL, in Glenn's world, he mentioned Salesforce earlier. We are completely open to sort of integrating with other partners. There's another retailer that has a Microsoft, so we're integrating with Microsoft. And then there's another one that is actually just taking Kaluza end to end with no other partners. But having that flexibility to work in different modes is really, really important. And also inherently in our platform, we integrate with the ecosystem of things like EV companies. So we work with Mitsubishi and Volkswagen and Volvo, and you go down the list. But again, it's that modularity and that open architecture that's absolutely required to innovate in today's distributed grid.
And finally, to close out this section, Santiago, last question to you again. If you could be brief in your response, I want to look at the customer side of things. When you're actually going through these huge technology transformations, how can you ensure that you stay focused on the customer, that you don't lose them in the journey?
Well, let me be very brief about that. I think maybe the right way to frame this answer is that we are not talking about two different things. We are talking about the same, two sides of the same coin. So you have to do the digital transformation to serve your customers better. So what I will say is that the key aspect to have in mind is that we have to change from a set of mind where we are trying to do tech transformation for efficiency to reduce our cost. And what we need to do is tech transformation for effectiveness in providing value to our customers. I think that's the shift in mind that we need to have in order to be successful in this endeavor.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And just a reminder to you, our audience, that we are about 10 minutes away from addressing your questions. You know what to do. Please keep sending them in. Go on the right-hand side of the web page, and we'll try to get through as many of those questions as we can in the time available. What we're going to do now is to close things out by talking about what a successful transformation can actually look like. How can it actually unlock things for your business and of course for your customers too. So Anne-Marie, let's go to you. From your perspective, what does or should a truly integrated and seamless customer experience look like, and how do you think tech can drive that point of perfection?
I think a truly and seamless customer experience is one where the customer feels understood, empowered, and in control, without needing to understand the complexity behind the scenes. So whether they're checking their usage, adjusting a contract, installing a heat pump, the journey should be intuitive. I think also the word proactive is quite important here, because we're connecting the data, so the experience is continuous. But how can we be proactive? And I think that's where we can also add a lot of very good customer experience. We have all these amazing AI models. So what can we learn from them, and how can we use that also in our customer-centric approach? For example, if a customer would get an alert saying, hey, your energy usage is 15% up, would you like to adjust your contract, or are you aware of this? I think, that's when you get this interaction. And I think we are in the era where that is possible. But I think it's about how do we get the products out there that can make it work. So I think, by optimizing the processes, we can really help customers make better, greener decisions. So I think there's a lot of potential, but really think about it in those ways. And I think, future's exciting.
It is exciting. I like the way as well that, again, you've reinforced the point which came out earlier in the conversation about putting the customer at the centre of things, that they can be part of a solution, but having that great relationship with them, that they feel that there is something very beneficial. And taking it to you, Santiago, the sense that I'm getting is that an opportunity isn't just there to improve the relationship with the customer, but also you've got some potential new revenue streams that could become available for the retailers if you get that seamless experience right.
Yeah, absolutely. But in any case, I will look at it, instead of looking at it as new revenue streams, I will look at it as a complete transformation of the business mission of the retailer. And let me explain it again, taking into account the history, this history of the retailers. So at the beginning, retailers was about selling energy. That's it, and was everything about risk management, right? Then what we did in retailers is to sell equipment, right? We said, okay, it's a commodity, electricity. Let me now sell, electrical vehicle chargers or heat pumps and so on. Now it's about how you put everything together, so the energy, the equipment, and the connectivity and the automation tools in order to transform the role. And as I said before, in order to help the customer, to empower the customer to have an active role in the energy transition. I think that's the key thing. So that will bring value, but as an integrated way, not as an additional revenue stream. And the thing I will mention is that the importance of the integration of the value chain. For companies like Iberdrola, it's about the value of retail, but it's about how retail is providing value, the integration of our renewable networks and customers. So I think, having a balanced view of value generation and retail position is also experience value to energy companies. So we shouldn't forget this aspect as well.
Thank you so much for that. And it leans into a point which I want to put to Glenn as well, because look, we started this conversation by looking at net zero and the pressures it imposes on retailers. But how do you think that technology transformation can help them meet that big challenge in a way that is cost effective, not just for their bottom line, but also for the customers? Because as we've all agreed, we've all alluded to, there are increasing cost of living pressures.
Yeah, and look, I think the opportunities are endless, and that's the beauty of where we are. As you point out, we are looking to balance that focus on making sure that we are delivering outstanding customer experiences and supporting our customers, really making sure they want access to the energy transition. They also want affordability to be front of mind. And the system is changing. So the ability to bring data and all of those things together in a tech transformation, it's critical that we enable that for consumers. And I guess, the value is there to be ahead of a modern architecture that allows us to move quickly. And look, no one really knows what the future looks like. I think that is why we're really looking to technology to enable something that allows us to move quickly and unlock new opportunities. And as I mentioned earlier, we've got within the Australian market things like virtual power plants, which are materially bringing energy consumers together to change the wholesale energy market and really allowing us to shift load around. We've got mobility solutions that are enabling customers to take advantage of EV subscriptions and really a whole range of things that are offering different ways to engage in the energy market. And I guess time will tell as to how they support the net zero transition. But it is a time to really balance a number of factors together, which is a challenge and an opportunity in itself. And I think that's a big part of why we're on this transformation to support that.
I mean, look, we all agree that the future is exciting. But Neil, from your perspective, how do you think that energy companies can actually use technology so that they can offer more tailored services, not just to the customers, but beyond that, as they navigate this transition? Because the transition is at the heart of it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think a good analogy for me is actually something we all use, right? The smartphone. You think about how much complexity is underneath that sheet of glass, how many different partners are pulled together, how much integration is required, and yet on the surface it comes off as completely frictionless to the consumer. And that, I think that is one of the key things, is taking the complexity out. That does not mean the complexity is not there, but you've done the hard work as a retailer, or as Kaluza serving the retailer, to do all the complex work and then present that single sheet of glass to the consumer. And if you do that as a retailer, you can have it all, right? So we see this at OVO Energy here in the UK, where we've helped them increase their NPS, their Net Promoter Score, by 40 points after launching all these different new propositions that are frictionless and seamless on the surface, but underneath the hood they're quite complex. But we've also helped them remove cost out of their business by reducing their cost to serve by well over 20%. So you can have it all, both improve consumer experience, reduce cost to serve. The way that we think about it at Kaluza, and a phrase that we use quite a bit in the hallways here, is customer lifetime value, which kind of brings together all of the different pieces: your cost to serve, your retention, and your NPS, and do customers love you, and how long does the consumer actually stay with you? And it brings it all together in one model called customer lifetime value, which I think does a good job of encapsulating kind of the mission moving forward for the next decade.
Okay, well, look, we've got about a minute to go before we take questions from our audience. So this is a question for all of you. Can I start with you first, Glenn? Then I'll move it around amongst you. But look, it's a slightly unfair question because I'm going to ask you to be brief. But what do you think the retailer of the future will look like? It is an unfair question, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a terribly hard question to answer. I think maybe that's the beauty of where we are is I don't think any of us really know. I think we know that consumers will be a big part of it, and that trust and the opportunity to provide them with effortless experiences is something that's going to be critical. But as we've talked about balancing all of those things, it is a great time to be in energy. It's here in Australia over barbecue, you often never would you talk about energy over a barbecue. Now it is the topic of the town. So great to be in the industry and be thinking about that.
It sounds like we've all been given an invitation there to his next barbecue, by the way, guys. So put it in the diary. But can I move it on to you, Santiago? What do you think the retailer of the future will look like?
Okay, let me be very, very brief. I will just say one sentence, which is that energy enables digitalization and artificial intelligence because energy is needed for that. And artificial intelligence and digitalization is defining and will define much more energy. Therefore, the retailer of the future looks like a digital company. That's very clear.
Do you agree, Anne-Marie?
I do agree. I think what we're going to see is that I think the landscape's actually going to be shaken up a bit still, and that you are going to see that there's tech-first models who are going to become bigger and more prevalent, not as fast as we think, but I do think that there'll be a bit of a shake-up still in the market. But big utility players will still continue to play a role. But let's see what these new players bring in. I mean, I think we should be very open-minded about that.
I think the future energy retailer is an integrator of many different energy services. You think about all the new players in trying to reach out to the customer, the EV company, the solar company, the battery company, the smart thermostat. And I think consumers don't want to actually deal with all that complexity. And so I see the future energy retailer bringing all of that together in a seamless package. Because frankly, even though they might consumers want to talk about it at a barbecue, they still want it to be frictionless and easy. So I see the energy retailer being an integrator.
Okay, thank you so much for that, for all of you, in fact, for sharing your respective visions. It has been a really good discussion so far, and clearly you agree because you've been sending in your questions. So please do keep on sending them through the web page. We'll try to use as many of them as we can in the time available. But before we actually get into those, please, if you can, take a very brief moment to rate today's webinar so far. Now, there should be a link to the feedback form through a purple button just beside the video player here on the web page. So look out for the purple button so that you can rate the webinar. Let me assure you as well that your response is totally confidential, but also very, very useful as well, because it helps us to get better at what we do. So my question to the panel is, are you ready for the first of our questions? Tough if you're not, because you're going to get them anyway. But anyway, let's kick things off. Now, the rule of thumb here, okay, dive in. There is no hard and fast rule. If people hesitate, Neil, I tend to choose them, but you know that already, don't you? You've worked with me before. Okay, so let's kick off with this one. Most companies are facing the need for digital transformation. What are the key elements you think are the biggest blockers in your sector for this? Who would like to tackle that one? Would you like to have a go, Neil?
Oh, that's so predictable, Julian. I hesitated, and you caught me on it. Look, I think, and this is something actually working with Glenn, and I've really enjoyed working with Glenn on the AGL transformation project. I think the key is candid communication on what are we solving for? Are we solving for the fastest path to transformation? Are we solving for regulatory compliance? Do we want to have little pops of innovation throughout the transformation journey? And really taking all of those dials and tuning them up front as to what the objectives are. And I've seen so many transformation projects go sideways when what you're optimizing for isn't clear up front, or one of the parties that are part of the transformation isn't clear and candid about that up front. So that's where my head goes.
Okay, then would anyone else like to add to that at all, or shall I move on to the next question? Don't feel under pressure, Santiago. Would you like to have a go?
I will wait for the next question.
Okay, let's go to the next question then, but thank you for tackling that one, Neil. Which technical skill sets are becoming essential for engineers, and how can emerging professionals align with future needs to stay relevant as the energy sector becomes more digital? A highly pertinent question, I believe, given where we are at the moment in the journey and certainly the amount of money that's being spent recruiting the talent to make sure that things happen. Who would like to tackle that one? Santiago.
Yeah. So during the last, as I said, during the last 10 years, I've been working on the transformation of the energy sector through technology, artificial intelligence. So the main lesson is that you need to hire in the right way. Otherwise, you are never able to do this transformation. So this is a people business, really people business. We are using the energy sector to, to have an asset, people, of course, but also assets, right? Capital intensive. This is not about capital intensive. It's about having the right people, doing the right things. So that's the most critical thing. So it's not only about hiring engineers and power system engineers, software developers, artificial intelligence experts. It's about learning new ways of working. Here is where we are having a big challenge, which is using collaborative tools, getting people into the agile system of working. The way you work maybe is as relevant as your background and what you have done in college. So I will say that this is a people business. Hiring right and getting used to work in a collaborative way using new tools and new capabilities and skills.
Okay, and Anne-Marie, because I know that you wanted to answer as well.
Yeah, and I think Santiago touched upon a lot of things here, but I think it's also, hiring now, there is a war on talent. So also be open to think outside the box, right? Because you don't need a very traditional, trained engineer to do a lot of the jobs. Sometimes you also need someone with a very different background who understands the problems well. I think if we look at what we need for future developments, we need to really make sure that we understand the problem well, but also keep in mind what's happening in society. Why is energy poverty such a theme? Why does that pop up? And that you don't get a big backlash when you develop products. So bringing that other angle in, I think, is really important. And also having people who can articulate that well. Because also in the times of AI, I think, if you work with AI, the most important part is that you ask the right questions, that you formulate it in the right way. So also this verbal skill or this formulating skill, I think, is becoming more and more important. So also when we hire, we really look at can people really articulate it well? Can they get down to the real problem fast? So take that into perspective and don't only think, I think, in the classical boxes of hiring, you need this degree, you need this amount of years of experience, because we're looking at a whole different type of skill set which you need nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, if you retreat into safety, there's a real danger that you could actually miss the right people to take you on this part of the journey. But thank you so much for that. Would our other panelists like to add to that, or shall I move on to another question? I'll move on to
Maybe
another
just one
question.
point from me.
Oh, sorry, please go on, Glenn.
Yeah,
Do go
and
on.
look, I think particularly in transformation, I think we've talked about it, how complex and difficult that may be, and I think really second the thoughts on I guess the ability to be flexible and have resilience in that environment. Things are moving so quickly, and so really for us, really looking as we're transforming for people that are curious, that are open-minded and are open to learning new skills. We're bringing new technology to them every day, and so yeah, just really second and third that point, I guess, on making sure that it is hiring for mindset and really making sure that there's an openness and a desire to learn. I think incredibly important.
Okay, let's go for this question then. Last mile engagement. How should end users participate in the energy and digital transition? There are quite a few questions buried in this one. Which approach could leverage their participation towards such transitions? And should the younger generation be engaged towards this paradigm change? What I'm going to do is just deal with the first part, then I'll throw out the second part and so on and so forth. But who'd like to tackle the first part? Last mile engagement. How should end users participate in the energy and digital transition? Who would like to tackle that bit?
I think it starts with why, right? Why do we want people to participate? What are we trying to get out of it? And I think that's a question which needs to be answered first. I think the question is so broad. So, do we want people to see their bills better, that they don't see that they have backlogs in payments, or what's the why behind it? And I think that's where I think we should start when we look at the question, because of course getting engagement with our customers is important, but what do we want to get out of it? Because you don't also want to overload a system where you only get tons of questions and they need to build up a whole other AI bot system to tackle these basics. So I think it starts with the why.
Okay, fantastic. Let's then move on to the second question built within this. Which approach could leverage their participation towards such transition? So we've worked out the why, and this is where the second question comes in, the follow-on. Who would like to tackle that? Would you like to have a go, Glenn?
Yeah, I guess,
Or Santiago.
I can Santiago, I can see that he's keen. And look, I think it is really meeting customers where they are on the journey. And I think, it is understanding that engagement is very different for different consumers. And I think of my daughter who's 8 years old and really engaging with technology in a different way than I did when I grew up. What she's going to want from as an energy consumer is very different in the way that she'll engage and want to be part of that. That is different. I guess for us, it's really, I think Neil touched on it earlier, that effortless experience for consumers and really value for them is going to be critical. And so what I think is clear is we can't engage in one way. It is going to really need data to support talking to customers where they're at and really engaging them in the journey. So I think incredibly important.
Okay, Santiago.
I think there are two key aspects that we need to work on as retailers with our customers in that regard. One is helping our clients understand the impact of their actions beyond saving money. I think we have been too much focused on, okay, you have to save money, you can do this, you can do that. But now the motivation is different, in particular in younger generations, as you said. So it's more about to tell our customers why it is important for the planet, for every one of us, that instead of using your washing machine at 12, it will be better if you do it by 2 p.m. Why is that? It's not only about saving money, it's about why this is important. So we have a responsibility of maybe helping our customers to understand this impact. And then the second responsibility is providing the tools, because you may have the intent, you may understand why, but if you don't have the tools to do it, it's impossible given the complexity of the energy system. So the second one is providing the digital tools that respect the wishes of our customers and their behaviors, but at the same time, they empower them, they enable them to have this role in order to have energy transition. But it's understanding the why and then providing the tools.
So you've merged the 2 points together, and thank you so much for that. Neil, can I get you to address the third part of that question? Should the younger generation be engaged towards this paradigm change?
Absolutely, and I think look, I think if you ask this question of what consumers want and why, you're going to get 1,000 different answers, and that makes sense because there's going to be 1,000 different segments of customers, all with different needs. But look, the best way, instead of me speculating on what the right answer is, and Glenn talked about this earlier, which is at the end of the day, these are all hypotheses. The best way to find out is not to overthink it. Just launch a new proposition into market, grow it to 10, then 100, then 1,000. Then 100,000. And I guarantee if you sort of take this iterative approach, you will learn so many things. You'll ask questions that you didn't even know you had questions about before you even started. But I do think that this is something that plagues our industry, which is sort of having these hypotheses, running a small pilot, thinking you've answered that question, and now we're going to go big. So we're going to do a small pilot, then we're going to stop for a year or two because there needs to be a big decision made, and then we're going to go big. I think about it a little bit differently, which is it's a constant stream of iteration and learning and testing new hypotheses. And as you do that, it will grow much more rapidly than sort of just testing one or two hypotheses at a time.
Okay, then. I want to close out with one final question here, and I'm going to throw that out to anyone to answer, but very briefly, if you could also be brief with your answers too. If we look to e-mobility, it looks like that innovation in batteries technology will be the main driver. Which is your opinion about it, or what is your opinion about it? Who would like to tackle that one very briefly?
This is something that keeps me up. No, so yes, batteries are going to play a big role in stabilizing the grid. We're going to see more batteries come out, and also you'll see that in charging solutions. But it's not. There's going to be multiple roles playing there, because also cars and car batteries are going to play a role. So I wouldn't only put it on batteries and charging there.
Okay, then thank you so much. Would anyone else like to add to that before we close things out?
On this one, very briefly, what we say is that a smart aggregation of electrical vehicles is one of the key drivers of transformation of the AI system. That's it.
Okay, no, that's fantastic. But look, thank you all because you've been absolutely wonderful as a panel. And also thank you, our audience, for those questions. Sadly, we didn't have the time to address all of them, so apologies for that. That's always the danger when you have these things and so much to squeeze in for an hour. But what I would ask you to do, if you could, is to put aside a couple of minutes before you leave us so that you can fill in the feedback form, which should be available to you as a small purple button on the right-hand side of your screen to give us your thoughts. You can share your thoughts with us. They will be in confidence. We need that feedback because it helps us to engage better with you, to give you more of what you want. But if you're still hungry for more insights, I think that our panel has delivered handsomely in terms of their experience and all the things which they're seeing, the trends that they're trying to deliver on. I told you they wouldn't I? They've got all that experience, okay? But if you want more insights, regardless of whether it's about technology, transformation, customer experience, or perhaps the utility sector more broadly, then I'm going to give you an invitation to add to your diary. Come along to the Future of Utility events this year, okay? We've got more webinars, of course, but also there is the event in London. It's on the 11th and 12th of June. That is our Future of Utilities Summit, okay? It is the premier UK utilities conference. It brings together senior executives from across the energy sector and indeed the water sector too. So please do come and join us. We'd love to see you. But don't forget that there are more webinars which you can check online. But for now, it is time to say goodbye. Thank you so much to our excellent panelists, delivering as ever, and also to you, our audience, for tuning in and being part of the conversation. Until next time, stay safe, have a great day, and we'll see you soon.